Caden stared at the crisp white check for $20,000 resting on the kitchen table in their suburban Chicago home. His father Richard pushed it forward with a firm hand, his voice steady, but laced with that familiar mix of disappointment and determination. "This is the only way to save you, son, to make you the man you were meant to be." Bennett Reed, the renowned counselor, sat across from them, his tailored suit and warm smile, projecting complete confidence as he accepted the payment and shook Richard's hand. "I give you my word, Mr. Thompson, our intensive program has transformed hundreds of young men like Caden, freeing them from these unwanted feelings and restoring them to the path God designed." Caden felt his stomach drop as the words hung in the air, his heart hammering so hard he thought everyone could hear it. At 23, he had spent years building a quiet life as a graphic designer in the city, creating logos and campaigns that paid the bills, but the secret he had guarded since college had finally exploded when his parents discovered old messages on his phone from his ex Tyler. The confrontation that followed had been a nightmare of tears, accusations, and late-night prayers around the dining table, where they begged him to repent and promised that without change, he would lose everything: the family business, the holidays, the unconditional love that had defined his world. Now sitting there in the familiar kitchen with its faded wallpaper and the smell of his mother's coffee, Caden wondered if handing over the money was the ultimate betrayal of himself, or the only way to keep the family that meant more to him than anything. His mother Elaine hovered in the doorway, her hands clutching a worn Bible, her eyes red from crying as she whispered that this would bring them all peace. He remembered the college years with Tyler, the stolen weekends in dorm rooms, the laughter, and the way being with another man had felt like coming home, but the fear of his parents finding out had poisoned it until Tyler walked away, saying he could not live half a life anymore. Caden had sworn after that breakup he would never drag anyone else into his closet, yet here he was choosing to lock himself inside even tighter just to hold on to his parents' approval. The drive to the therapy center 2 hours outside the city felt endless, with Bennett chatting easily with his father about success stories and testimonials while Caden stared out the window at the passing cornfields, his mind racing through every choice that led him here. Was he weak for agreeing or strong for sacrificing his happiness to spare them shame? The center itself looked peaceful enough, nestled among trees with neat cabins and a large meeting hall, but as they pulled up, Caden saw other young men unloading bags, their faces a mix of hope and dread that mirrored his own. In the orientation session, Bennett stood at the front, his voice commanding as he outlined weeks ahead filled with one-on-one counseling, group discussions, prayer sessions, and activities meant to reshape their thoughts and desires. Caden sat in the back row, gripping the arms of his chair as he shared in vague terms during the first circle his story of unnatural attractions, the shame burning hot on his cheeks. Bennett praised his courage, promising that dedication would bring real change, but as the session ended and Caden lay awake in his assigned bunk staring at the ceiling, the internal battle raged harder than ever. Part of him clung to the hope that this could work, that he could finally fit the mold his family needed. Another part, the quiet voice deep inside, whispered that love was not a flaw to be erased, and that paying $20,000 might buy temporary peace, but it would cost him his soul. Little did he know that the man who had taken their money carried his own hidden burdens that would soon crack the foundation of everything. The next morning began early with a group hike meant to build brotherhood, but Caden found himself walking beside a quiet guy named Marcus who admitted in a low voice that he was only there to keep his scholarship. The small connection felt like a lifeline in the sea of forced positivity, yet Caden pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the letters he would write home promising progress. By the end of the first full day, as he sat through another session of journaling his supposed triggers, he realized the real battle was not with his feelings, but with a decision he had already made to trade his truth for their acceptance, and the price was only beginning to reveal itself. The second week at the center brought a rhythm that Caden both clung to and resented: the early morning prayers, the structured meals, the endless talks about rewriting neural pathways through scripture and positive reinforcement. Bennett moved through the group with an easy authority, his sessions one-on-one with Caden focusing on childhood memories and supposed wounds that had led to his attractions. "You are not broken, Caden, you are simply misdirected," Bennett would say, leaning forward with that intense gaze that made Caden feel seen and exposed at the same time. During those private hours, Caden found himself opening up more than he intended, describing the isolation of hiding his identity at family gatherings, the way every holiday photo felt like a lie, and the deep ache when he thought of Tyler and the life they could have had if fear had not won. Bennett listened, nodding, encouraging him to release the shame, but Caden noticed how the counselor sometimes paused, his eyes distant, as if the words stirred something personal. Back in group sessions, the men shared victories, some claiming reduced thoughts after visualization exercises, others admitting setbacks with downcast eyes. Caden forced himself to participate, speaking of small steps forward, but inside the doubts multiplied every night when the lights went out and memories flooded in of stolen kisses and parked cars, the warmth of acceptance he had tasted and lost. A phone call from his mother midway through the week only deepened the conflict. She cried, telling him how the church ladies were asking about him, how proud his father was already talking about him rejoining the family firm once cured. Caden assured her he was trying, his voice cracking as he hung up, knowing the lie tasted bitter, but the alternative of disappointing them felt worse. Marcus, the guy from the hike, became a quiet ally during free time, the two of them walking the grounds and sharing guarded stories, Marcus revealing his own long-term partner back home, waiting in secret. Their conversations planted seeds of resistance in Caden, making him question if the program was really healing or just teaching better hiding. One afternoon during a role-playing exercise where they practiced responding to temptation, Bennett paired Caden with a participant who broke down mid-scene, confessing he could not keep pretending. The group rallied around him with prayers, but Caden saw the exhaustion in every face and wondered how many were performing for the same reasons he was. By the end of the week, as reports went home detailing supposed progress, Caden sat alone in his cabin, replaying his father's last words before dropping him off, the promise that this investment would bring their family back together. The moral weight pressed on him, the choice to continue for their sake versus the growing certainty that he was paying not just money, but pieces of his identity. Bennett called him in for an extra session that evening, probing deeper into his past relationship, and when Caden described the pain of losing Tyler, Bennett paused longer than usual, his voice softening in a way that felt almost empathetic. "You have carried this alone for too long," he said, but the words landed differently, now stirring Caden to wonder what secrets the counselor himself guarded behind the polished facade. The internal storm built as Caden wrote his weekly letter home, full of half-truths, knowing each word was another step deeper into the bargain he had struck, and the cost was mounting with every passing day. As the third week unfolded, the pressure from home intensified, with daily calls and emails from his father demanding updates and sharing how the extended family was praying for his deliverance. Caden found himself fabricating more details in his responses, describing breakthroughs that existed only in the journals he filled each night to satisfy the program requirements. In group, Bennett introduced exercises on accountability, where participants were encouraged to confront each other on slips, and Caden watched as one man was publicly shamed for admitting a late-night thought, leading to tears and renewed commitments. The atmosphere grew heavier with each session, the air thick with shared shame and forced hope. Marcus pulled Caden aside one evening after lights out, whispering about a plan to leave early, claiming the program was doing more harm than good, but Caden hesitated, torn between the budding friendship and the fear of letting his parents down. The betrayal of considering escape felt as heavy as staying, knowing that walking away would mean facing the same rejection that had driven him here. During a family visit day, his parents arrived with his younger sister, who hugged him tightly, whispering that she missed the real him, the one who laughed without the weight in his eyes. His father pulled Bennett aside for a private update, returning with a satisfied nod, while his mother pressed a new Bible into Caden's hands, inscribed with a verse about overcoming. The visit left him raw, the love in their eyes clashing with the truth. He could not voice that the therapy was eroding his spirit, not rebuilding it. Back in sessions, Bennett began sharing more of his own journey, claiming he had walked the same path years ago and found freedom, which only made Caden admire him more while sensing the story had gaps. One night, after a particularly grueling group where Caden had to list all the ways his attractions had hurt his family, he lay awake replaying every decision, the choice to come out to his parents, the ultimatum that followed, and the desperate agreement to this program. The societal weight pressed into the news stories of discrimination, the whispers at his old job before he took leave, the way the world still viewed men like him as broken. Marcus confronted him the next day, saying, "If you keep lying to them and to yourself, you'll lose more than money, you'll lose who you are." The words hit hard, forcing Caden to face the moral dilemma of protecting his family at the expense of his own mental health. Bennett noticed the tension during their next private meeting, probing gently until Caden admitted the growing doubts, only to have Bennett redirect with scripture and encouragement that felt increasingly hollow. As the week closed with a progress report sent home, Caden realized the real conflict was not his sexuality, but the choice to keep trading his truth for their approval, and the price was becoming unbearable with each new layer of pretense. The fourth week brought a turning point when the program scheduled a mock public testimony session where participants practiced sharing their cures for a simulated audience. Caden stumbled through his prepared script, feeling every word as a deeper betrayal of the man he had been with Tyler, the genuine connection he had sacrificed. Marcus refused to participate outright, leading to a tense group confrontation where Bennett mediated with calm authority, but Caden saw the flicker of uncertainty in the counselor's eyes for the first time. Later that night, Marcus confided in Caden about receiving a letter from his partner urging him to come home, the decision weighing on him like a physical burden. Caden advised him to stay for the sake of family support, knowing even as he spoke that he was projecting his own fears onto his friend. The betrayal stung when Marcus later reported the conversation in group as a test of loyalty, forcing Caden to defend himself and deepening the rift between them. Family pressure peaked with a surprise call from his father announcing they had told the church elders about his progress and booked a celebration dinner for his return, the expectation crushing Caden further. In his private session with Bennett, he broke down describing the isolation, the constant performance, and the fear that nothing was changing inside. Bennett listened longer this time, his usual polished responses giving way to a quieter admission that some struggles took longer than others, his voice carrying a hint of personal weight that Caden could not ignore. The moral dilemma intensified as Caden considered writing an honest letter home, but tore it up each time, imagining the pain it would cause. Societal prejudice crept in through news playing in the common room about ongoing debates on therapy and rights, making him question if the world outside had changed enough to accept him, or if his family was right to fear the consequences. A group outing to a local church service only amplified the conflict, the sermons on purity hitting him like accusations, while Bennett led the prayer circle with practiced fervor. Back at the center, Caden confronted Bennett alone, asking if he truly believed the methods worked, the counselor pausing before reaffirming his commitment, but with a hesitation that planted new seeds of doubt. The week ended with Caden making the decision to push forward for one more month, telling himself the sacrifice was temporary, even as the internal voice grew louder, warning that the real cost was his soul, and the awakening was coming whether he wanted it or not. Midway through the program, the cracks in Caden's resolve widened as the intensive sessions delve into deeper emotional work, forcing him to relive the moment he had ended things with Tyler to protect his secret. The pain resurfaced raw and unfiltered, making group shares feel like open wounds, while other participants nodded in shared understanding or judgment. Bennett scheduled extra one-on-one time, noticing the struggle, and during one late evening meeting, he shared a vague story from his own past about a friendship that had tested his boundaries, the revelation humanizing him in Caden's eyes and sparking a tentative trust. Family ultimatums arrived via email, his father threatening to sell his share of the family business if progress stalled, the financial and emotional leverage pushing Caden to double down on the exercises despite the growing emptiness inside. Marcus left abruptly one morning without goodbye, leaving a note for Caden that simply said, "Do not lose yourself," the words echoing through the following days as Caden faced the program alone. Societal stigma manifested in a visitor day when a former participant returned to testify, his polished story of marriage and children ringing false to Caden, who saw the forced smile and heard the tremor in his voice. The moral conflict reached a peak when Bennett asked Caden to lead a prayer session, the public performance feeling like the ultimate lie, yet refusing would risk his parents hearing of rebellion. He chose to comply, the words tasting like ashes. He prayed for strength, knowing he was asking for the wrong kind. Bennett pulled him aside afterward, praising his leadership, but his eyes held a new shadow, as if the counselor's own facade was thinning. Caden spent nights journaling, not the required entries, but private thoughts about what life could look like if he accepted himself, the possibility both terrifying and liberating. The rising tension built toward the program's final conference, where Bennett was scheduled to speak publicly about their success stories, the invitation including Caden as a featured example, the pressure mounting like a storm on the horizon. He made the decision to prepare his testimony, carefully balancing truth with the expectations that had brought him here, but deep down the choice felt like the last stand before everything changed. The final weeks accelerated with rehearsals for the big conference, where Bennett would present the program's achievements to a large Christian audience in downtown Chicago. Caden practiced his story under Bennett's guidance, the words crafted to highlight transformation while omitting the persistent doubts that haunted him daily. Family calls grew more insistent, his mother planning a welcome home party, his father promising reinstatement in the business, the rewards dangling like carrots that only made the internal sacrifice feel heavier. During a private prep session, Bennett seemed distracted, his usual confidence slipping as he admitted the weight of helping so many, the comment hanging between them like an unspoken confession. Caden pushed gently, asking if Bennett ever questioned the methods, receiving a quick deflection, but the hesitation lingered. A betrayal came from within when another participant leaked private journals to the group leader, leading to public shaming that left Caden questioning every alliance he had formed. The moral dilemma sharpened as he considered warning Bennett about the program's toll on participants, but fear of losing the family support kept him silent. Societal prejudice surfaced in a news segment. The group watched together about lawsuits against conversion efforts, the room growing tense as Bennett dismissed it as media bias. Caden lay awake that night, weighing the decision to speak his truth on stage or continue the performance, the stakes never higher, with his entire future tied to the outcome. Bennett called an unscheduled meeting the next day, his voice lower than usual, as he shared a story from his early career about a client who had struggled similarly. The parallel to Caden's situation unmistakable and stirring fresh doubts. As the conference date approached, Caden made his choice to go through with a testimony for his family's sake, telling himself the temporary lie would secure permanent peace, even as the awakening voice inside grew impossible to ignore. The group boarded buses for the city, the air electric with anticipation, and Caden felt the weight of every decision that had led him to this moment, the price of his silence now measured in the lives affected, including his own. The conference hall buzzed with hundreds of attendees as Bennett took the stage under bright lights. His presentation, beginning with testimonials and statistics that painted the program as a beacon of hope. Caden sat in the front row, his heart racing as his turn approached, the prepared speech memorized but feeling increasingly foreign. Bennett spoke eloquently about the transformations he had witnessed, his voice carrying the room until midway through he paused, the silence stretching as his expression shifted from confidence to something raw and pained. "I can no longer stand here and claim success," he said, the microphone amplifying the tremor in his words, "because the truth is that these methods do not cure what is not a disease." Gasps rippled through the audience as Bennett continued, confessing that he had taken money like the 20,000 from families like Caden's, knowing deep down the harm it caused, his own suppressed identity finally breaking through in public view. He revealed his own years of hiding, the same attractions, the guilt that had driven him into this work, and the growing realization that he had profited from pain rather than healing it. Chaos erupted with shouts and protests, but Bennett stood firm, turning to look directly at Caden, his eyes filled with regret as he apologized for the betrayal of trust and the false promises. Caden froze in his seat, the words crashing over him like a wave. The $20,000, the weeks of struggle, the family sacrifices, all built on a lie now exposed on this very stage. His mind reeled through every internal conflict, every decision to stay for love of family, now shattered by the man he had trusted most. Security escorted Bennett off stage amid the uproar, but the damage was done, the truth hanging in the air, undeniable and liberating. Caden stood on shaky legs, pushing through the crowd, his thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal, anger, and sudden clarity. The cost of the journey finally laid bare in the most public way possible. In the days following the conference, the fallout spread like wildfire, with media coverage of Bennett's confession and families demanding refunds while supporters decried him as a traitor. Caden returned home to face his parents in their living room, the same table where the check had been signed, now a battlefield of accusations and tears. His father raged about the wasted money and public embarrassment. His mother sobbed, asking what they had done wrong, while Caden stood firm for the first time, voicing the truth he had buried for so long. The decision to accept himself came at the price of their immediate rejection, the family business door closing and holidays turning silent. But in the quiet that followed, Caden found a peace he had never known, reaching out to old friends and beginning to rebuild without the weight of pretense. Bennett faced backlash, losing his license and reputation, yet he contacted Caden with a simple message of apology and encouragement to live freely, the exchange marking the end of one chapter and the start of another. Caden reflected on every choice, the payments, the struggles, the betrayals, and the awakening, realizing that the real cure had been the truth revealed on that stage. He rebuilt slowly, finding community and purpose in his design work, no longer hiding the man he was. The journey had cost him family approval, financial security, and years of denial, but it had given him something priceless, his own unapologetic self. True or false? Is it ever morally right for parents to spend thousands forcing their adult child into conversion therapy to align with family beliefs?